Hi, this is Trey Patrick. I'm going to do a couple of more Mr. Nightmare videos. I love Mr. Nightmare, so I'm going to do the first of three. Okay, I believe this one is three Nightmare Warehouse stories, horror stories, so let's get right to it. I'll be back right back with my reactions. Okay, here we go right now. Go. Warehouse horror stories. Story one.
I was assigned as a security guard with the midnight shift at a very large Omaha warehouse when I was a young man.
Okay.
This building was mainly used for storage and it was huge. We as security personnel were tasked with hitting several stations inside this building on the night shift.
Okay.
And this required that we did a lot of walking. There would always be two personnel assigned to the warehouse at night.
Okay.
One patrolling the outside perimeter in a car and one inside the warehouse on foot. Being outside, sitting in the comfort of a car was obviously the more desirable of the two.
Yep.
I was working a Wednesday night. I was about half an hour into my shift. I would start the shifts walking around for about an hour, just surveilling the place before sitting down in one of the security offices.
Okay.
This room had some low-budget, ancient camera system that at the time was impressive technology.
Yeah.
But it only had two screens because there were only two cameras in the entire warehouse.
Jesus.
One in the northeast corner and one in the southwest corner. That's why we couldn't just sit on our butts in the security office our entire shifts and had to actually patrol the place. This was a shared warehouse for some tech companies, and a lot of expensive equipment was held here.
Okay.
Hence why two security guards would have to be there every single night. The warehouse layout was similar to that of a regular grocery store. There were like 10 to 15 aisles, and one intersecting aisle that cuts between the other 10 to 15 in the middle. I was still making my initial rounds around the place when I saw all the way down at the end of the aisle I was in, something at the end section. It was like this white thing that kind of resembled the shape of a head, and it was poking out from behind the end section. Mind you, it was so far away that all I could make from it was this white-looking object.
Okay.
I elevated my slow stroll to a moderately quick speed walk, and halfway through the aisle, the white thing disappeared behind the tower of boxes. This confirmed my fear that it was a person, and that I wasn't alone in there. I now ran to the end of the aisle, hoping to see the other night guard walking around or something. As I stood in the southwest corner of this giant warehouse, I looked up at the camera in the corner, and it was pointing in the direction of the thing I just saw. I looked in that direction, and there it was again, at maybe the 7th aisle, that white thing I saw earlier. Now it was a lot closer, and I could make it out to be someone's face, as I feared. But it wasn't the other security guard. It was this extremely pale, ghoulish-looking face. They once again slowly hid their face behind the tower of boxes. I walkie-talkied the other guard on duty, and he radioed back that he was in the car by the back section of the parking lot. He said roger that, he'd be here in 5. Getting off the phone with him, I was nervous to approach the aisle that I saw the person's head.
Call the cops.
Even though this is exactly what a security guard's purpose and job is, you never actually expect or anticipate seeing any action.
Exactly.
I took a deep breath and ran to that aisle and stopped at the end of it to look down it. The person wasn't in sight. I figured they must have ran for it. So I ran halfway down hoping to catch up to them, but I stopped when I smelled this horrible putrid odor. It smelled like a dead, rotting carcass. I followed the scent until it became overwhelming and I found the source of it. It was coming from this big wooden box that was different from the rest of the boxes. I pulled the lid off the box, and inside was a dead body laying in a pool of blood. The most shocking part of it was that it was missing a head.
God.
I walkie-talkied to the other security guard again, and yelled at him to call the police and report a dead body in the warehouse. I said this all while running as fast as I could to the back exit of the warehouse, struggling to get enough air. I threw up the second I made it out the door. I ran to the other security guard's car and sat in there with him, gasping for air. He was still on the phone with the police, so I took the phone and told them whatever the other security guy didn't. Given the nature of the situation, they sent like 5 or 6 cop cars and basically had the entire place surrounded. The body was loaded into an ambulance, and for a good chunk of the night, police were in the warehouse doing forensic work. Perhaps the weirdest part of all of this was that when trying to go back to the video footage captured from the night before, the footage cut out for about 3 hours in the middle of the night. There was no explanation for this happening. I've thought about this night for almost my entire life, basically. I don't believe in ghosts or anything, but I don't really have an explanation for this. I've thought about some far-fetched possibilities, though, like that whoever the murderer was in the warehouse that night and was holding up the severed head of that body, hence why it looks so pale and ghoulish. In fact, it gave me chills just now thinking about it again.
Oh, that is crazy. Story 2.
Several years ago, 2 friends and I heard from a mutual friend about this creepy abandoned warehouse or furniture store that was only a few miles from my house.
Jesus.
One night while on a drive, the 3 of us decided to check it out.
Ah,
We parked at a Walgreens a few hundred yards from the warehouse and started walking towards it. As we got closer, my friend, I'll call him Jim, kinda chickened out and stayed back while me and my other friend, I'll call Mark, continued on.
Smart friend.
As we approached the right side of the building, it became very obvious that this place had been abandoned for a very long time. The front entrance was boarded up, and there were vines and ivy growing all over the building.
Jesus.
Our mutual friend said that the only way in was through a busted-in wall in the back. We went around back, and sure enough, there was a broken-in narrow section of wall we could get in through. We stepped in, and it was completely dark.
Okay.
Couldn't see our hands in front of our faces, so we turned on the flashlights on our phones and looked around. There was trash and debris everywhere on the concrete floors.
Jesus.
We were in what appeared to be the main room of the old store, and it was huge. An entire football field could probably fit in this room. We could even hear an echo when we talked. We started looking along the walls, which were covered in graffiti. The graffiti was littered with what must have been gang symbols as well as profanity, as you would expect.
Yeah.
What was really unsettling, though, was that as we moved further along the back wall, the graffiti was getting more and more disturbing. One of them read, "Kill yourself tonight." Then the graffiti was getting satanic. There were tons of inverted crosses, pentagrams, 666s, and violent scenes depicted. While this stuff was creepy enough, it wasn't the worst of what we saw. Towards the end of the building, there were some steps leading to smaller rooms. As we shone our lights on the steps, we saw a large, dry pool of what was probably blood all over the steps. This deterred us from exploring the smaller rooms beyond,
think?
so we headed to the left side of the room. As we were walking, our lights caught something hanging from the ceiling. We got closer and saw what it was. It was a noose, still hanging from one of the rafters.
Jesus.
It became very obvious that the people that come to this place use it for very evil purposes. After that, we decided we'd spend enough time in there and headed for the hole in the wall we entered through.
Yeah.
We got outside and saw that there was another, smaller building/warehouse behind the main one. Despite the freaky things we saw inside, we were still curious and decided to check this one out too.
Boy.
One thing that was very odd was that there was a small room in the front of the warehouse that had no doors, only one window. Inside was a large inverted cross hanging from the decrepit ceiling.
Jesus.
We came to the left side of the warehouse where the large garage-style entrance was. This building was similar to the first one. It was one large empty room with tons of trash everywhere. There was more disturbing graffiti. However, there were these holes at the base of the walls that were really odd-looking.
Okay.
We shined our lights down them but couldn't see the bottom. What were these for? We had seen enough at this point and headed back outside. It was then that my friend Mark got a call from Jim. As he was talking to Jim, his face suddenly changed to a downright horrified expression. I said, "What's wrong?" What he said next sent a chill down my spine. "Someone else is here," he said.
What?
Before we could even turn to run, a white truck peeled around the corner at an alarming speed,
Jeez.
heading right towards us.
Jesus.
We started booking it towards my car, and as we got around the other back corner of the building, we saw another black truck parked alongside.
Jesus.
We kept running as fast as we could, and thankfully the 3 of us made it back to my car. We got in and peeled out of there. I don't know what those guys in the trucks were there for, or why they chased after us, but based on what we saw in those buildings, it wasn't anything good. Thankfully, we never found out, and we never returned to that place.
Shouldn't have went there in the first place. Story 3.
In my mid-20s, I used to be a party planner and event coordinator.
Okay.
I was basically in charge of throwing dope parties for this record label group.
Okay.
I'd have to rent out venues for a night or weekends, which would allow us to host our events in these places. Usually we wouldn't pay until after the event, and the landlord or owner of whatever property we were using would take a cut of the profits.
Okay.
There was this one time that my group rented this big warehouse for an entire weekend, and we would be hosting parties Friday and Saturday night. Once the place was rented out, I had to do a lot of setting up,
Okay.
which included setting up tables for bottle service, setting up portable bars, and a DJ stand. A lot of work would go into these kinds of pop-up venues, but they were always extremely profitable. My buddy Jack, who was also on the event planning team, was helping me on the Wednesday before the party weekend. He drove a truck full of equipment to the empty parking lot that the warehouse sat in. I was having trouble figuring out how to get the power to a certain part of the warehouse activated.
Okay.
I looked for any kind of electrical panel or circuit breaker box, but I was having trouble finding one. I gave the building owner I dealt with a call, and he picked up almost right away. His name's Carter. He told me exactly where to go for the electrical panel that would turn on the specific lights I was looking for. He directed me to a door that had an exit sign on top of it, but it wasn't on. Through this door, I was in a very short, very narrow space with a door on one side which I presume led to the outside, and then a half flight of stairs on the other side. I was supposed to go down this half flight of stairs,
No.
which led to another tight space with a couple doors. This room was hard to explain without just seeing it for yourself. I'm 6'4", so I had to bend down a little bit just so my head wouldn't hit the ceiling. That's how cramped it was down there. This level had very dim nightlight kind of lights hung on the ceiling. Dim but enough light to navigate just fine. I found the electrical panel, and Carter told me exactly which switches to flip. Then I shut the panel door and turned the key to lock it,
Okay.
even though he told me to just leave the key in the lock. I thanked him and our call ended. I heard a loud and obvious buzzing sound that would be going off in spasms. I followed the sound of it to a door leading to a pitch-black room. Pulling the door open was hard as it scraped against the concrete floor. There was this red light in the top corner of the room that synchronized with the buzzing sound. When the buzzing stopped, the light would also turn off. I was trying to figure out what it was, but it didn't make sense. I stepped deeper into the room and noticed whenever I moved, the light would turn on and the buzzing would sound. When I stood still, it stopped.
Motion detector?
I don't know why, but I was creeped out, so I went back to the doorway of the room. I took one more look inside,
Okay.
and the red light turned on again, lighting up the room with this eerie red glow. I decided to call Carter and tell him about the potential problem with the light and the buzzing. He told me calmly that the light was a motion sensor,
Yeah.
and the buzzing was because that one in the basement was busted. I asked what he meant by motion sensor, and he explained that there's at least one in every room in the building, as it's part of the security system. I looked back into the room, and the light was still on. I asked what could be setting it off in there, and he said he had no idea. And that's when I spotted it.
What?
There was someone, I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman because of the long disheveled hair, sitting in one corner of this room, half hidden behind a pile of old boxes.
Jesus.
Their eyes were the most noticeable feature because of how goddamn wide they were open. The mouth was like a half smile. They were moving their arm in a manner that was as if to tell me to come here.
Oh boy.
I know it took me a few seconds to describe this person just now, but I was literally screaming at the sight of them in under a second. I slammed that door shut and ran back up the stairs and out that exit door. I told Carter we were leaving and not using the warehouse anymore. I didn't ask any more questions after that. I didn't care. It was his problem. I yelled at Jack to get everything he could back into the truck. We collected our stuff as quickly as possible, loaded the truck back up, and left. I didn't even bother locking the door to the warehouse. I just wanted to be far away from there. I still today don't know what to make of it. The Carter guy seems so weirdly calm about my telling him about a deranged-looking person in the basement of his warehouse. Thinking back, that light was probably going off because of that person sitting in the corner waving me over,
Yeah.
or doing whatever the hell he or she was doing with their arm. It was a truly nightmare-inducing, horrible experience.
Very weird. Okay. Okay, those stories. I definitely think that last story, that's probably a homeless person probably living in that warehouse. It's a warehouse. And especially if it's empty most of the time, it probably squatters, probably had a squatter living in there, a homeless person probably living in there. Exactly. Even that guy didn't know about the guy, you know, and maybe that's why he's calm, because he knows that from time to time he probably has to clear that place of homeless people that move in there, because especially if it's an empty warehouse in the city somewhere, and it's, you know, empty space and people know about it and it's easy to access. You know, people, you know, homeless people have got to live somewhere sometimes. So, besides shelters, so that would be like the perfect place because it's indoors, nobody's around, right? You got shelter for you, you know, so you don't have to worry about the weather and stuff, and you can sleep in there because like I said, especially if the place is a empty warehouse and nobody's in there most of the time, that's a perfect place to squat. Okay, so that's probably what that was. I know that probably freaked you out because you wasn't expecting anybody to be in there. So that would definitely freak me out too. the second story, why does people want to always investigate empty warehouse? Oh, warehouse has been empty for years. So, let's go investigate. No, I'm not that curious. Okay, I don't want to go to an empty warehouse. I know maybe when you're younger you're a little fearless and sometimes you're a little stupid. Okay, but I know as me now, I would never, but I don't even think back then. I think I would say, you know what? There's an empty warehouse. Speaking of that, when I used to live in a basement, I remember that we used to live in a basement apartment years ago, and we used to live in like the main part of the house. There used to be like, you come down the steps, and then to the left there was an immediate door. It was like a storage room, I guess, for all the tenants upstairs. I think that's what it was. It was a storage room, and that room, for some reason, it was always black. It was never, I guess, when we moved in there, nobody had ever put a light in there. Okay, and it was just always, pitch black in there. It's always just pitch black. And then, you go further on and then into the main part of the house, and then you walk along, and if you make the left before you go to the main part of the house, there's like a long hallway where the meters were, and then beyond the meters, where if you make a left, it would be that entrance to that black room, okay, where that, that empty storage room, and then to the right, I think it was the boiler room. But I remember as a kid, we used to go in there, and it was never lit. I don't know why my mother never put a light bulb in there, or they waited till the daytime. I guess they just never did it. It was an empty storage room, and it was always pitch black in there, always pitch black. And I think we went in there, but I think only in the daytime. I think, and we never went in there at night. But it was always pitch black, and it was supposed to be like a storage room with stuff in there. But there was never any lights put on in there. I don't know why my mother never turned on the lights, or I'm trying to remember back then, but I don't think she ever put on the lights in there for whatever reason. But there was junk in there. And I think in the daytime, I think me and my brothers, one time we opened up the doors and stuff so you can, and from the outside, you could see it was like a storage room. It was like a big, large room, and had just stuff in there, like boxes and everything else in there, and probably rats or whatever else. But we just never, and my mother had no interest in turning on a light in there. I don't know why they never put a light on in there and just cleaned it, or even just had a light for it. It was just an empty black room. And I used to always imagine, especially when I used to be a kid, I used to, when you used to come down to the basement and go into the house and look down that long hallway and stuff. And I used to always imagine, what if somebody came down there and started chasing you? But that was just another story. But anyway, the second story, I'm not that intellectually curious that I want to explore an empty warehouse. It's just not a thing for me. And I know people want to do this. Oh, let's go and see what we can find. No, I have no interest in that. Okay. Now the first story, that was probably, that was freaky. That, he saw the head out there. That probably wasn't no ghost. That was probably either, like I said, the murder, or somebody was playing tricks with you with that head, poking the head out, and trying to freak you out. I don't know. Obviously, it wasn't the guy, fellow security guard. That could have been some person that was in there, wanted to freak you out, dangling the head. But especially that's a dead body. That's insane. That story that would have creeped me out too, especially in a big warehouse by yourself, and your partner is outside the warehouse. He's not in the warehouse with you, and especially if it's that big place, they should definitely have two people, not one person. That's just being cheap. Whoever owns that warehouse, they should have definitely two people. Okay, because what if, God forbid, somebody break into the warehouse and kill you, and your partner's outside? You don't know. Okay, you should definitely have two people patrolling inside and two people patrolling outside. That would be the ideal place. Having one person patrol inside and one outside is a recipe for disaster. What if the guy outside gets knocked off, right? Somebody snatch him out of the vehicle, exactly, and then you don't know. You're looking for him. You think he's outside. You can call for backup, and there's no backup for you, and then they break into the warehouse and kill you because you're there by yourself. That never made no sense to me. Okay, but like I said, I'm not intellectually curious about that first story, so I think but that would have freaked me out, that with the head, and then you smelling the odor and finding the dead body in there. I would have immediately left. Okay, ain't no way I'm sticking around. Okay, because whoever was dangling that head could still be around. So that was freaky. So anyway, let me know what you think of these three warehouse stories. I think the first story would have been the freakiest. The second story was stupid because, especially, they come out of the place and then people start chasing. You saw all that satanic writing and stuff on the wall and all. Yeah, you never know. It could have been a cult using that space just to, write their drawings and all that stuff. And then they saw you out two knuckleheads roaming around there. Said, there's two more sacrifices. You're lucky you made it back to your car. Okay, don't be intellectually curious that you want to see what's in that empty warehouse. It's empty for a reason, okay? Let them tear it down or whatever. You don't have to explore it, okay? Okay, trust me. That's just asking for trouble. And the last story, like I said, that's probably was like a homeless person probably in there. I know it just freaked you out because you wasn't used to nobody being in there, and probably the manager, the landlord probably wasn't freaked out because he probably said, yeah, it's probably homeless people that come in there. Exactly. So again, like I said, the first story I think was the freakiest, especially just one guy in, one guy outside. So basically, you're both exposed as more than one person, you know, trying to break in the warehouse. You're gonna fight off 2 people or 3 people. And same thing with the guard outside. He's gonna fight off 2 or 3 people. I don't think so. So that's why it's stupid to me. You have one person inside, one person outside. Especially it's supposed to be a big place like that. You should have 2 people. Okay, it's 2 people outside, 2 people inside. That's the better rule to me. Anyway, let me know what you think of these stories of Mr. Nightmare, 3 warehouse horror stories. I'll leave a link to Mr. Nightmare's channel in the description box so you can check it out for yourself. Also have links to my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. Also have a link to my other channel, Bob Views and Opinions, so you check that out as well. Also have a link to my Patreon. And I also want to say a thank you to my patron. His name will appear in this video at some point. And I want to say thank you to him for supporting me. And check out my Patreon channel. It's $5 a month. Tons of content on there. Okay, and I'm putting content on there every week. So check it out. Follow the link and check it out and join if you want. Okay, and this is Trey Pastor saying so long and take care.